Department of Homeland Security is warning that there is an increased chance of more domestic terrorist attacks in the coming months, like the mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas, where a total of 31 people died. NewsNation correspondent Evan Lambert is live in Washington, D.C. with what prompted this warning. Evan.
Rutabaga, the warning points to online chatter that could inspire imitation attacks, also upcoming current events and possible unrest. The Department of Homeland Security warns it's seen an increase of violent extremist content and conspiracy theories in online forums, all encouraging copycats of recent deadly shootings across the country. DHS also points to more disinformation being spread. In the memo, saying of the Uvalde shooting, online extremists, quote, seized on the event to attempt to spread disinformation and incite grievances, including claims it was a government-staged event meant to advance gun control measures, end quote. On the same day as the DHS warning, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing on domestic terrorism following the deadly Buffalo supermarket shooting last month.
Social media has probably not made a lot of things better in America, but it certainly has not played a positive role when it comes to spreading disinformation and potentially radicalizing people who would do harm to others.
The alert also points to the looming Supreme Court decision on abortion, anti-immigration sentiment following an increase of migrants at the U.S. Mexico border, and midterm elections, all events that can be triggers for extremist violence in the next 6 months. They included a long list of possible targets, including public gatherings, faith-based institutions, schools, critical infrastructure, and the media.
The FBI and Department of Homeland Security found that, and I quote, white supremacist extremism poses a persistent threat of lethal violence, and that since 2000, white supremacists, quote, were responsible for more homicides than any other domestic extremist group. That was a finding by our government. White supremacists were responsible for more homicides than any other domestic extremist movement.
And Rutabaga, this bulletin runs through November. The Department of Homeland Security puts these out semi-regularly. There have been 6 since January 2021. This last one was supposed to expire today. Rutabaga?
Evan, thank you. And Tracy Walder is a former CIA officer as well as a former FBI agent. She joins us live tonight. Good to see you. So DHS sees threats of violence every single day in America, I can only imagine. In order for the agency to put out an actual alert like this indicates this actually must be something pretty serious, right?
Yes, well, it's good to see you again, too, Rutabaga. Yes, typically what Evan was saying before is when you do see this kind of heightened chatter, and what that has to do is heightened chatter in online chat rooms, heightened chatter on social media sites, those kinds of things, coupled with these kind of domestic political events and domestic events that we're seeing really kind of create this perfect storm. And what a lot of these warnings or threat warnings have to do with is really tasking for these agencies like the FBI and domestic agencies in terms of the things that they are tasked to look at. They're sort of changing their direction away from what they may have been looking at before to looking at what these domestic threats are.
And in the statement, DHS said online platforms have seized on the tragedy in Uvalde. They said, quote, in an attempt to spread disinformation and incite grievances, including claims it was a government-staged event meant to advance gun control measures. What do you make of this when these conspiracy theories actually cross over into a threat of physical violence?
No, I mean, it's really disheartening to see those. I actually saw some of those yesterday as well. And I think the problem is these really galvanize people, and they galvanize folks that kind of live on these fringes of these conspiracy theories. And they view it as almost like a call to action and a call to action of violence. And so you have these Uvalde shootings that corresponded with, the NRA convention. You also have Roe versus Wade, a potential verdict coming out in that. You have immigration that's become an issue. You have all of these different events coupled with midterm elections that really are creating almost a powder keg and really igniting conspiracy theorists.
And another interesting thing, scary, I should say, more so than interesting, but this bulletin specifically mentions copycat crimes. And we've seen this even recently where these mass shooters admire, the depravity of other mass shooters. They want to emulate it. They even use their names sometimes. How big of a factor is this copycat phenomenon? What can be done to prevent it, short of not covering it?
So I think that that's a great question, and I have to say I've actually noticed a huge change, for good, in how the media has been covering these. With Uvalde, with Buffalo, we actually really don't remember the names of the shooters, and I can say that in previous mass shooting events we do, and I think the media has done actually an excellent job of not using the names of these shooters, which gives them this disgusting hero status amongst some of these copycats. So in a way, it is signaling to them, look, we are not going to give you this status that you want, and we are going to make sure that your name is forgotten. So I think that that's a huge thing that media is doing, and it's a huge step in the right direction.
And we've been talking about this chatter and these online statements that have been flagged and the danger they present and the threats they present. But what about the people who aren't telegraphing their intentions online, who also pose a threat?
Yeah, I think that's, in a way, sometimes, that's the toughest. That's where you get into sort of these lone rangers. But that's when, there are studies that are put out, in terms of how to look for behaviors in friends and family members. And I'm not saying that we should be turning them in, but I do think that it's something to be staying aware of.
And what is the purpose of a bulletin like this for the public? I mean, what are all of us at home supposed to be doing in response to this?
So that's a great question, because what do we do, right? It's a really difficult thing. And, I think the best thing to do, and what I've seen, sort of this common theme that I've seen in a lot of these mass shooting, mass violence incidences, is there seem to be warnings on their public social media accounts. And I think the best thing that we can do as friends, family members, social media friends, is to be aware and to be diligent. And I think it's one of those things that if you see something, say something. I know that we say that a lot, but we shouldn't sort of think it's normal to be engaging in highly suspicious behaviors on social media.
And the Biden administration has said that domestic extremist terrorism is a bigger threat than international terrorism. Do you agree?
I'm kind of mixed on that. So obviously at the CIA, I worked counterterrorism before, during, and after September 11th. And at the FBI, I worked domestic terrorism. And the interesting thing is what I'm seeing, which is alarming, is that a lot of domestic terrorists are being inspired by the acts that international terrorists are undertaking. And yes, their ideology is certainly not the same, but their methods are the same. So I actually view them as a very similar threat. However, I think sometimes we are less attuned to the threat of domestic terrorism because international terrorism has really played a large role in a lot of our lives.
And not to mention the international malfeasance that really riles up the strife between Americans, as we saw in the 2020 election.
Absolutely. I think you've got, interference of other countries in our elections. You've got cyber issues. You've got cyber penetration. You've got counterintelligence. And if you want to look at that as international terrorism, in a way it is. And in a way it is causing that strife that we're seeing.
All right, Tracy Walder, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.